Hi, it's Alistair from Lecture Scotland. This is the newsletter for, let's just double check on this one. It's March the 16th, 2018. So, what have I got this week in the newsletter? Basically, I've given you a bit of background information on how Britain's doing in the world as far as exports and reducing our debt's concerned. The wee article I took, this small article I'm putting in the news item, was making a comment that because of all the good news going around, no one's talking about it. They apparently only want to talk about bad news. So I thought I'd bring you some good news because we're doing very well indeed. And I give you some information in the newsletter. I'm also highlighting the Scottish Studies Foundation because it got some very interesting venues coming up. So again, I thought I'd give you some notice on those, where you can go and what they're about, and links so you can order tickets online to go to them. The news this week, well, mostly when it comes to the UK, of course, the news is mostly about Russia at the moment, because clearly we've had some real problems with Russia. Nice to see the States was backing us up. It would appear that most of the European countries, France in particular, are pretty iffy about it, which goes to show that, in my opinion, the Commonwealth countries and the US are where we want to be spending a lot of our time and effort, and the sooner we're out of the EU the better, because they don't give a damn about us, clearly. Anyway, the news stories that I've picked for you this week, first one is lab to table meat. This is where they're growing meat in a lab. Now right now they admit it's way expensive. You could spend $16,000 on getting a steak for your plate. So no one's going to spend that kind of money for sure. But they're pretty sure that as they get their expertise up and ramp this up, that they can get the price down to pretty much the same as buying real meat. And of course, we don't have all the problems with... Anyway, it's got an interesting video which kind of shows you the process it's going through. And I'm always interested in stuff like this. Like, last week I talked about vertical farming. And that's got a lot of potential, I think, for the future. And it may well be this lab-to-table meat also has interesting possibilities for the future. So, anyway, I like to read those stories, certainly, and I hope you do as well. The next one I've got is a wee kind of story I thought you might be interested in. It's the Ancient Kingdom's new Pictish stone. It's the best Scotland has seen for ages. This is basically a new stone that's been created. So again, you may or may not be interested in that, but I kind of thought it was interesting. It's got a good picture of the stone as well. So I thought it was kind of interesting, that one. Then I'm talking about the Italian election lays bare the gaping north-south divide, and also tensions build in the new explosive German coalition. So again, two important European Union countries are having their own issues at the moment, so it's not just Britain that has issues. Brexit. I'm more excited than ever about what the future holds. This is an article by Suella Fernandez, who's Under Secretary of State at the Department for Exiting the European Union. And having read his story, I must confess I was pretty enthusiastic about it as well. As you know, I am obviously for Brexit, but I just think the more positive stories we get, I think the better. Because even if you don't want to remain, it's doom and gloom at the moment for a lot of people, so hopefully that might excite you a wee bit. Then I got two articles about the Commonwealth. Brexit is rightly making us focus on the network of markets of the Commonwealth, and the other one is the UK's opportunity to reinvigorate our trading relationship with the Commonwealth. And I must confess, I'm delighted to see many more articles on the Commonwealth, because I've been talking about the Commonwealth for some months now, saying why aren't we talking about the Commonwealth? And I've been leaving comments on newspaper sites and in various communications I have with people. And so maybe that's done something to make people think, well, maybe we should look at the Commonwealth. So hopefully I've made a wee bit of a push on that side. And obviously one for the States, you know, the Tartan Day in the States. Katie Tunstall's to be the first woman to lead a Tartan Day parade through New York. So again, I thought that might be of interest to our American viewers. Charmed Inner Circle of Official Scotland. Well, it basically says the point about language is important. The various agencies of Official Scotland enjoy considerable powers of narrative privilege, a concept that refers to the ability of senior figures to tell their own story in a way that reflects on themselves. Basically, the article is saying there's no real scrutiny being given to these people. Like the journalists we don't have investigative journalists anymore really in Scotland, which is a shame. And it's really saying it's about time we did, because we have to hold some of these people to account, and we're failing to do that. Again, I mean, to be honest, that's, even if you're for independence, I think it's still highly relevant that. Then, next one I found, again it's another agriculture one, is Galloway Farm Dairy champions ethical cheese. And the way that basically, apparently, when the calves are born, they're literally taken away from their mothers immediately, so you get more milk. But this particular farmer is saying, we don't think that's right. We think the calf should stay with the mother. And so basically the calf stays and suckles with the mother, and basically they get any milk that's left over after that. And they think that's a better way of doing it. And it's a 3-year project that they're running, but they feel that it's going to be no more expensive than the way it's done at the moment. So if it can be done with no more cost, why wouldn't you want to do it? Because it's better for the calf. So again, there's quite a wee bit of information in that particular story, so you might like to read it and have a think about that one. Then there's another story, again it's something of interest between Scotland and the Florida pupils. Dunblane survivors send emotional message to Florida pupils. It's basically a video of that, where a lot of the pupils and the people of Dunblane are talking to the pupils over there and the families. Then I have a story about Sturgeon Banks May over the Russian response, which is very nice. And another article about the UK's best Russian riposte is hiding in plain sight. So these are the two articles that kind of cover the Russian situation, which is getting a lot of press at the moment in the UK. And that's basically it. So not a great deal this particular week. Electric Canadian, I've continued to do transactions of Canadian Society of Civil Engineers, got up to the 1927 edition this time around. Various things are covered, like forest conservation in British Columbia. We've got like sewers of the city of Montreal. There's an article about Union Station in Toronto, and also preservation of Douglas fir, and other articles, tons of articles. I only usually highlight maybe a dozen or so, but tons of articles in these ones. Tons of obituaries as well, by the way. So if you were looking for a relation about those dates and they were engineer, you might actually find a mention of them in here. Then the next article I got is Digital Canada 150. This was the 2007 version or vision for Digital Canada. And as you know, Canada celebrated its 150th anniversary. So it's a really good PDF, that, so I hope you'll enjoy reading that one. Then I got The Scot at Home and Abroad. This is actually a substance of a lecture delivered by the Scottish-Canadian poet John Imray of Toronto in 1898. And not only do we get some of his poems, but he gives us some of his thoughts on the Scot at Home and Abroad, essentially. And then we have a story from Conrad Black. It's Mr. Trudeau, if he can, should get serious about running the country. Ooh. I like Conrad Black. He's controversial, but I think I don't know, he always makes me think anyway, so I enjoy his articles. Okay, as for Electric Scotland, this week I've put up a Gaelic book. I can't pronounce the title. Philidach, I don't know, can't pronounce it, but it's all in Gaelic, so if you can't speak Gaelic or can't read Gaelic, then there's no point in you looking at that book. But basically I got that book because I got an email in from someone asking me if I could find the words to a Gaelic poem, and the bullet poem was by someone or other, so I had a look around, and basically I found it, and this is the book that had the poem in it, so I was able to give him the poem, and I thought, well, as I've got the book, I may as well put it up on our Gaelic page, which I've done. Then I got the Bannatyne manuscripts. This was produced in 1568, so one of the very oldest of our historical publications, and it's in 4 volumes. So I thought again, I mean, I can't imagine you reading all 4, but I thought maybe you might like to open it up and have a look at what it says. Then I got a page, I created a page for Gary Gianotti. Gary is the guy that's been sending in a lot of stories about symbolism and everything. But he's sending in for quite a few years now to the site, and I've kept posting up articles, and they end up in various places on the site. So, but he was telling me that his work on buttons has made a huge difference now, because apparently they used to be praised around $1,200, but now they're selling for $45,000 and even more. So clearly his work has influenced the auction scene and the way people perceive the value of these buttons. So that's pretty significant. And he was telling me a story. He's found he's managed to help an antiquarian digger in England, because they've come up with a cross, and that cross, Gary thinks, could sell for as much as $1 million. So I figured his work is actually changing people's minds in the histories departments of universities and auction houses and museums. So I felt really we should pull his articles together onto one index page, which is what I've done. So when you see the link, you'll get to all his stories. Then we've got Bibliographical, Antiquarian and Picturesque Tour in the northern counties of England and in Scotland. This is a book that was produced in 1838, so it's quite old. But he was chaplain and ordinary to Her Majesty. So he's quite a significant character, the Reverend Thomas Frongnale Bidden. That's how you pronounce it. Again, I had a wee read it. I didn't read it all, but I read sufficient. Volume 1's about the northern counties of England, and Volume 2's about Scotland. The Scotland volume is about 700 pages, so it's pretty lengthy. But I read some of it, and I really thought it was good. Then I've got another one, which is The Life and Times of the Elder Reuben Ross. So he was born in the US, but his parents were from Scotland. And this is a story of his life, basically. And again, I thought it was kind of interesting. and it talks about many people in that time scale, so it gives you a good feel of history when you read it. Then I've got another volume up in the Quartermaster Supply. Remember, this is the US Quartermaster Supply that functioned in England during the World War II. And I never even thought about what they got up to, but having read the previous volumes, I'm just gobsmacked at what they covered. They did a massive job of work. And in this particular one, they've got sales stores, post exchanges, and tentage, and miscellaneous supplies. So I mean, it's again, they obviously had to go through them to get the uniforms for the various services and stuff like that. So again, it just opens my eyes to stuff I didn't know about, actually. Then we have Best Newfangled Family Tree. This is the first of the April editions, which is section 2. Actually, it's usually section B, she says, but I go into the habit of doing section 2. So I've kind of stuck with that as such. But I don't know why she doesn't do section 1 first and section 2 after, but this is from the old print editions. And I think section 1 was always the most up-to-date stuff. But anyway, that's the way she does it. So 2018, April, section 2 is now available. Then I've got Ross Grant, Tenderfoot. Now, basically here's 2 novels, both by the same author and about the same Ross Grant. They're novels, but they're based on a kind of mining, going to a mining camp, gold mining camp. And apparently he's got background information because he was at a mining camp, so he knows what he's talking about. So while it's a novel, I just thought it was kind of interesting. He also wants to be a doctor, and apparently he's learned a lot because he's spent the last 7 years with an uncle who is in fact a doctor. So he's learned a huge amount, and he's been wanting to go to university to actually get so he can become an official doctor. But he keeps getting sidetracked because his father apparently doesn't really want him to be a doctor. He'd prefer him to come into the business. So, but he does some doctoring on the way around and does a pretty damn good job from what I can see. So I thought you might enjoy reading those novels. And the final story is the Scottish Highlander, which is by John Lyle Morrison, who's Professor of History at Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario. And basically he's writing about the Scottish Highlanders in the olden days. But what's quite interesting is, if you want to follow these kind of stories out, is he quotes his sources. And I think I have most of the books up from the sources he's quoted, like Campbell and Maclaurin and so forth. These are people that took down the oral traditions. You know, they hand wrote out the stories that have been told orally and published them over the years. So again, it's a useful reference book from that point of view, as well as the general stories he's telling. And then the actual story for this particular week, I departed from my usual ones, and the title is UK and Sri Lanka Bilateral Trade. As you know, I've been saying that I think the Commonwealth is a great opportunity for us. Well, this is actually a debate that was done in the House of Lords in 2014, and it was about trade with Sri Lanka. And it's 2 lords that are obviously doing the main debate with each other, but they both have a lot of experience of Sri Lanka. And I thought to myself as I was reading it, I thought, you know, this is providing really good information. And I also felt it gives you an idea of how we could develop trade with the Commonwealth, much more than we're doing at the moment. So I thought, well, I'll put that up and you can get an idea, because what they say about Sri Lanka can be said for pretty well all other Commonwealth countries. So, that's it. So, hope you enjoyed some or all of the articles and the stories that I put up this week. And As usual, I'll put a link to it if you're watching this on YouTube. Then the link will be underneath the video. You can click on it and go get the newsletter and get all the links to the stories. Otherwise, it'll all be below. Okay, thanks for listening.